Not a single study in the history. The CDC, the NIH, and the WHO all agree on the exact steps needed to prove a virus causes a disease. The crazy part? Not a single study in the history of virology has ever actually followed them. So, when people who question germ theory get into a debate, they often ask for two simple things. It's a logical request based on the scientific method. First, show me particles, actual viruses, that have been taken directly from a sick person, purified so it's just the particles and nothing else, and then photographed with an electron microscope. No lab-grown cultures, just pure particles from a person. Second, show me that those exact purified particles have been used in a controlled experiment to make a healthy person or animal sick with the same disease. It's a simple chain of causation. Cause and effect. Find the thing, isolate the thing, and prove the thing causes the effect. But every time, the response is the same. That's an impossible standard. Koch's postulates are outdated. You're not a scientist. You don't get to decide the rules. They say no virologist would ever agree to these standards. Well, here's where it gets wild. It turns out those impossible standards aren't made up. They are the official standards of the very organizations people trust most. Let's look at the receipts. The National Institute of Health, the NIH, on its own website, says the rules for proving an organism is pathogenic are known as Koch's postulates. The CDC, in its own 2018 field manual, states that Koch's postulates form the basis of proof and are necessary to satisfy. The World Health Organization, the WHO, was even more direct. In 2003, they stated, conclusive identification of a causative agent must meet all criteria in the so-called Koch's postulate. They even listed the 4 steps. Find it in all sick people, isolate it, put it in a healthy host and cause the same disease, and then find it again in the new host. So, if the highest health authorities on the planet say this is the required proof, why has it never been done for any virus? Here's the secret. They can't. In a Freedom of Information Act request, the CDC itself admitted that separating a virus from everything else, what they call purification, is outside of what is possible in virology. They can't get the main ingredient for their experiment. Instead, what they do is take a bit of fluid from a sick person, which contains human DNA, bacteria, fungi, all sorts of stuff, and mix it into a lab dish with animal cells, fetal cow serum, and a cocktail of antibiotics and other chemicals. Then, when the cells in the dish start to break down and die, they call that the cytopathogenic effect and claim a virus did it. They never actually saw a virus go in. They just assume it was there and that it, not the starvation or the toxic chemicals, killed the cells. It's like blaming a ghost for a mess in a room where you also released a tornado. You haven't isolated your variable. This isn't the scientific method. There's no proper control. They don't take the purified particle and show it causes the disease. They can't, because they never have the purified particle to begin with. Even the history is shaky. Edward Jenner, the supposed father of vaccines, based his whole smallpox theory on a Dairy Maid story. He took gunk from a sore, scratched it into a kid, and when the kid didn't get sick later, he called it a success. He never used a control group. Without a control group, you can't prove anything. It's just an observation with no scientific comparison. So, the question isn't whether we should trust science. It's whether we should demand that science follows its own rules. The authorities lay out a clear, logical chain of causation that must be proven. But when you look closely, for virology, the most important links in that chain have always been missing. They are asking us to believe in a conclusion, without ever providing the fundamental proof they themselves say is required. This
Okay, did you see what I see, Tar? Did you see what I saw? That was from a web, I'm not even sure. Okay, it's NVM or whatever it is down here. Okay, so there's a group of doctors like Tom Cowan, Stefan Lenka that are just blasting the virus narrative from a fundamental level. And we're not even talking about COVID. We're talking about the very structure of how virology is created. And I want to show you something here. All right. So there's comments. People are saying, yeah, I know about this. It's all a scam, this and that. And there are people like, well, da, da, da. But the point is, there's thousands and thousands of views. There's like 700 shares. And there's just a ton of comments. Most of them are affirming this missing proof in virology claims. And the point is, okay, so the point is, if you're a consultant and your clients are Pfizer or Moderna or whatever, right? What do you do? What do you do? What if these claims are correct? What if the public opinion is backing these claims? What if these claims are incorrect and there's a groundswell of people that still believe this misinformation? You understand me? There is a things are moving so fast, and these hot button issues are just so incredibly divisive, right? If you say, hey, did you hear climate change is just a bunch of nonsense? You don't get, really? Wow, I don't have to worry about the end of the earth? No, you get this. Why is that? Why is that? If you say, hey, viruses, there's a growing amount of work in studies and saying that the whole virus thing is non-existent, so you don't got to worry about viruses anymore. No one ever says, really? Wow, wouldn't that be interesting? I don't have to get vaccinated, worry about viruses? No, you get this. Why is that? We're going to talk about why that is, but first we're going to do a little shameless self-promotion. We're talking about live broadcasting, baby. Let's give it up. I think we can get a boom here. Yeah! Just over like 10 days I went, I kind of chilled out. October, September, and I just started around the beginning, maybe the first week of November, and it went from like 100 impression state to 5,000 in just like a week and a half. So you can just give it up. That's the power. That's the analytical engagement, impression power, getting more viewers, so on and so forth. But the real power in live broadcasts, the real power is when you're doing a live broadcast, you can get all this reconnaissance without it being public, right? You don't have to do a live Facebook thing. You could do a live Zoom thing. You could go live in all different capacities, and you could get reconnaissance about what's going on, about what's happening. All right? And why this is so important? It's not because of that. It's important because, right, so there's blanket immunity. You can't, the Pfizer and the vaccine, you can't sue for a vaccine injury because there's blanket immunity. The 1986, there was, I forget the details, but if you sue because of vaccine industry. You don't sue the actual company. You end up suing the federal government. There's a a slush fund. I don't know the right word, but there's just a bunch of money there to pay people who say they've been injured by vaccines. All right, and so that if you're a consultant, you might think, hey, well, it doesn't matter what people say. They've got immunity with COVID. They have this, emergency immunity thing. It's all cool. We don't got to worry about it. Well, that's not necessarily true, because in March of last year, the FDA was brought up into court on charges that they were just completely out of line, that they didn't know what they were doing. They had this campaign that was something like, ivermectin, it's horses, y'all. It's literally, it's for horses, y'all. Just stop it. I think I've got it right here. Yeah, so this is their campaign, right? This is the FDA. You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it. And so these doctors brought the FDA to court. They said, sorry, screw you. You're full of crap. We are curing people with hydroxychloroquine. We're curing people ivermectin. What you're doing is just, ridiculous. And so the FDA said, blanket immunity, baby. Sorry, we're immune. And the doctors lost. But then they appealed. And it was clear that the appeals court was going to side with the doctors. And so they settled out of court, all right? And they removed they had to go retroactively, all right? They had to go retroactively and remove all of these posts from everywhere, not just from their website, from all of social media, delete everything, okay? So this idea that immunity is going to protect vaccine makers, right? If you're a consultant for Big Pharma, and if you're thinking, well, I don't care what these people say about vaccines, they're protected. No, they're not protected. They're only protected in if there's no fraud, right? If there's no fraud, everything is cool. But if there should, and so just like with the FDA, the argument was, you're not a doctor. This is not your job. Immunity doesn't even come into play here, because it's not about even COVID or ivermectin. It's just you're punching above your weight. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to talk about efficacy, not if something works off label or not. And so it was a huge sort of victory for these people who are saying that the official narrative is complete BS. All right? And so I've got a number of articles here to reference from. But anyways, so what I wanted to get to is what's going on, right? Why can't we, if the science says something is like double-blind studies, it shouldn't be that hard. But what is so just all over the place is the hysteria, right? Just endless, just hysteria, vaccines, global warming, gender, this and that. What's with the hysteria? Okay, so we're going to talk about that real quick. It's because there's a vacuum of meaning. God is dead, right? We've torn down old belief systems in a very short period. All of a sudden there was God, then there's no God. So we've torn down old belief systems, but the impulse towards meaning doesn't vanish, it mutates. The impulse towards meaning doesn't vanish, all right? It mutates into something else. So there we are. And what emerges is a new form of moral fervor, passionate, identity-driven, and often unchecked by human forgiveness. That one, I think we can give a little. All right. So, modern movements today take the place of moral frameworks. Today's religious structures are often borrowed from things that relationships and structures, architecture that was part of past religious beliefs. Structural injustice, right? What is that called? White. What do they call that? Structural not white supremacy, but anyway, structural racism. There's a name for it. Anyway, structural injustice becomes original sin, right? The predisposition, the genetic predisposition for disease is like an original sin. So, we're putting these ideas in these old containers that religion used to hold. Privilege, right? White privilege becomes the confession. Reparations become a penance. Climate fear becomes the apocalypse, and public shaming becomes the Inquisition. And why is that? Is because just because the architecture of faith disappears doesn't mean that meaning disappears. It just mutates. So we're still looking for meaning in life. We're still we're still mesmerized by transcendence. When a baby smiles, we feel good. When we pet a dog and its tail wags, we feel good. Why do we feel good? Right? That's a transcendent experience. We're still looking for those emotions and those experiences. So, the result, a moral framework of religious zeal, but without its grounding in a shared truth. It's a grounding in a personal identity, right? So there's no shared truth. There's no shared idea about Jesus. I remember one time I was in an apartment, bâtiment. I was in the world of bâtiment in Paris at this time, and so I was there. I had an Indian colleague from Goya, right? I had an electrician there from Romania, and there was a housekeeper there that was Filipino. And so the Indian and the housekeeper were talking about Christ, talking about Jesus Christ. And then the Romanian guy started talking to the Romanian, the Indian guy, and the Filipino housekeeper were all talking about Jesus Christ. I was like, this is incredible. Imagine this story went around the world without internet, without anything. Why is this story so powerful? Because it helps people in their search for meaning, in their search for order in chaos. And so now that structure is gone, there's no common truth. There's just an individual identity. And that's why you get insanity, right? So today, public trust and legal momentum can shift overnight. We saw it, right? We saw it shift overnight. All of a sudden, blanket immunity is no longer a given. It was just stamped down in this case. Even though there was a settlement, you heard the judges talk, about how bad the FDA was out of line. So fragmented identities and rising skepticism fuel volatility and can trigger regulatory shock, court reversals, and narrative swings in a news cycle. And today, when you have videos like I just played, where there's attacking the whole foundation of virology, and there's all of these interactions and engagements, right? How do you monitor that, to the point where you can feel the tipping point, right? That 100th monkey thing. How do you monitor that? By scouring the internet, right? By just, collating just endless hours of social media posts. That's not the way forward. So institutions face a new dilemma. We're going to go really quickly through this. In this landscape, the real risk isn't public sentiment alone. It's a sentiment converging with legal action, creating sudden shifts legitimacy that outpace institutional cycles. For global consulting firms, this volatility demands new levels of foresight, agility, and real-time perceptions. What was that last word? Real-time perception. The institutions operate when institutions operate inside controversial, politicized, or fast-changing industries, they face a big dilemma, and which is to maintain alignment with long-term clients. Right, your client is Pfizer. Right? Your client is Pfizer. What, do you just pat each other on the back and say, oh, immunity is going to be great? What if there's a public groundswell? How do you monitor that? How do you know if it's real? How do you know what's misinformation, what's not misinformation? Right? What's the plan, man? Prepare for potential shifts in public trust. Remain neutral and credible. You can't, especially if you're a consulting firm, you can't take a stand one way or another. Right? If you plant your feet in one thing, you go down with the ship. If you plant a thing with the other thing, you may be part of a hysterical revolution that has no foundation, right? You can't be a part of this. That's not a good place for a consulting firm to be. All right. So where do I want to go to? In upheaval, zeal without truth accelerates instability. If people don't believe, right? They don't have to completely move one way or the other. But if they're like, you know what? Maybe there is something to this, right? If the belief vanishes, institutions that fail to adopt get swallowed by the narratives they ignore. If the narrative is out there and you're just not aware of it, you're not really just a consulting firm. You're just a cheerleader, right? You're going to be a consulting firm. You're going to be a cheerleader. Okay, so this is what I wanted to get to, right? When belief systems fracture at scale, corporations don't fail because of facts. They fail because trust collapses faster than they can respond. We're moving that fast, all right? We are moving that fast. They call it the Overton window. Like nobody thought that we'd be locked down for 2 years. Then all of a sudden... and the problem with big consulting firms, big institutions, is they are blind in real time. They're so big that so many filters, such a hierarchy that real-time data as a difficult time being acted on. And lawsuits don't start in courtrooms, they start on TikTok. Let me say that again. Lawsuits don't start on courtrooms, they start on TikTok. Judges are people too. Judges scroll social media. Judges see what's happening. It's not like just because you're this giant company that you can continue to work in a way that's counter to the narrative of trust that the public you serve sees you in. All right, so consultants should see the collapse before it's coming. If you can see the collapse, if you can see that the narrative's shifting, and your client is one of the big pharma companies, right? You have to be able to war game and present that data and say, look, this is what's happening. How do we protect your interests? Or this court case is on the docket. How do you make that assessment? Oops. All right. So you make that assessment through live streaming, through connecting with your customers, through connecting with your community. And if you don't have a live narrative nervous system, you are already in trouble. What's a live narrative nervous system? You're looking at it right now. This is a live narrative nervous system. And in the world of like social media and TikTok, you take your phone and you point it at yourself and you do a little dance, and it's really cool because you're authentic and they can see kind of where you live a little bit, or your community, or this and that. And so that's the world of social media. Authenticity, being authentic is holding a phone and talking into it, because there's no lying in there, right? But you can't do that if you're a consulting company. You can't do that if you're a professional organization. You need something that looks like this. It's non-negotiable, all right? So in today's world, because I exist, because I'm putting this type of quality where there's background music underneath my voice, I'm going to shut up and listen to the background music. Now I'm going to talk and it disappears, all right? That's broadcast technology. It's called side chaining, audio ducking. If you don't have a live narrative nervous system, you are already in trouble. So, not only do you just crush it, right? In terms of look at that nice healthy rise. And so I'm gonna get a good bump after this broadcast, and who knows, might get something a little viral happening, and it could shoot up. I got during the summer, or was it this year or last year? I can't remember. I was doing like 50,000, man. I was just crushing it. I can't remember. I think it was earlier this year. I'll have to check my records. Anyways, so that's what I be talking about. Times are speeding up. They're going faster and faster every day. Missing proof in virology claims. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, so this guy's in support. Good video. Right? Okay, okay. Dr. Lenka in Germany figured it out. Dr. Stefan Lenka and Tom Cowan, they are just raging on social media, talking about this very issue. All right. So, if you are a Big Four accounting firm, Big Four consulting agency, Little Four consultant agency, if your job is to consult and you don't have a strategy to incorporate real-time data, to go out and like go fishing and like what's the narrative, what are people thinking? If you don't have a strategy, you're not going to be around for very long. So, I don't know. I just thought of something like go live or die. I gotta throw that past ChatGPT. See what it thinks. All right, we've been 30 minutes. That's good enough. Good enough for me ranting and raving. All right, man. Thanks for watching. This was a good one. Got all that off my chest. All right. Well, you guys take care. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you next time. Au revoir.